Good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us. The show is the Diaspora Dispatches. You get to be updated on the latest news from across the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and I trust that your day is coming up well. It is Monday, the 23rd of May, 2022. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in and watching us. Today we shall start our news from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the United Nations force in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has condemned attacks against it by M23 rebels and urged them to immediately cease hostilities. In a statement on Twitter, the UN acknowledged the courage and determination of its forces who responded to the attacks. In a statement on Twitter, the UN acknowledged what I've said there. Now, the M23 rebels accused the UN forces of plotting with government forces and local militia groups to stage simultaneous attacks against them. Heavy fighting on Sunday and Monday morning in the Rushuru territory of North Kivu pushed thousands of civilians to flee their homes, with others fleeing to Uganda. M23 spokesperson Major Willie Ngoma told the BBC that the UN forces were seriously shelling at our position with helicopters. Mr. Ngoma accuses MONUSCO, the UN mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, of helping a coalition of the army and other militia groups to attack them. UN forces have the green light to use the force to fight the rebel groups, but locals say they have done little in more than 20 years of their deployment there. The recent clashes come while the government is negotiating disarmament and reintegration with several local rebel groups. Last month, as talks were starting in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, M23 representatives were rejected from the negotiations after the group was accused of hostilities. And an elephant summit opens today in the resort town of Hwange in Zimbabwe to look at the management of elephant populations. Several countries are expected to push for the global ban on ivory trade to be lifted. Zimbabwe, Botswana, and several other countries are demanding the right to sell their ivory stockpiles to use the money for the conservation of growing elephant population. In 1989, the Convention on International Trade on Endangered Species banned the sale of ivory to feed a demand mainly in China in order to fight poaching. Africa is home to about 415,000 elephants, the largest population in the world. Zimbabwe has 85,000 jumbos, double the carrying capacity, and conflicts with farmers arising as elephants stray from parks to find food. More than 70 people were killed by elephants last year. Zimbabwe says the ivory stockpile is worth about $600 million, would boost their underfunded conservation efforts. And the Nigerian government has cancelled the resumption of train services between the capital Abuja and the northern city of Kaduna, earlier scheduled for Monday. The services were suspended in March after gunmen blew up the railway with an explosive device, forcing a train carrying hundreds of passengers to stop. They then opened fire, killing at least 9 people and kidnapping more than 60 others who were still in captivity. It is not yet clear why the resumption of the services has been postponed indefinitely. Families of the hostages have been angered by the planned resumption, saying the decision was a sign of insensitivity by the authorities. And Senegalese President Macky Sall says he will travel to Russia and Ukraine soon in his capacity as the current chairperson of the African Union. Mr. Sall said on Sunday that he had received the mandate of other EU heads of state to make the trips. In a joint conference with visiting German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, he said Africa was keen to see peace through dialogue between Ukraine and Russia. The Senegalese president said Russia had extended an invitation for a visit, while Ukraine's president had expressed the need to communicate with African heads of state. The Russian-Ukraine crisis has cut off supplies of grain and cooking oil, worsening food insecurity, particularly in poorer African countries, due to rising prices. Global fuel prices have also risen as a result, adding the cost of burden to many countries. And hundreds of residents have been evacuated in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province amid a high alert over renewed flooding. The province experienced deadly floods last month. Heavy rains have been pounding this weekend, and the local administration is on a high alert to prevent any loss of lives. Local mayor says no comprehensive report had been shared on the impact of the latest heavy rains, but residents have reported destruction of infrastructure, and a local news outlet there has reported a level of 10 warning. The highest and most severe level issued by the Weather Service remains in place. And we come back to Uganda. And Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni says his government will not intervene in the current economic situation amid a rising cost of living. Prices of petroleum products, imported raw materials and food have been rising in recent months, a crisis being experienced globally following the war in Ukraine. In a televised national address on Sunday night, Mr. Museveni said that the government subsidies or removal of import taxes would collapse the economy. There would be a hemorrhage of dollars from the national reserves for the purchase of those expensive products, he added. Mr. Museveni said Uganda will need to frugally use the imported items it can afford. He advised the citizens to substitute expensive wheat with locally available food such as millet, maize, green bananas and cassava. Most of Uganda is highly productive and many families depend on subsistence agriculture. And then you head back to Nigeria, where police in Nigeria are investigating the beheading of a local member of parliament in the southeastern state of Anambra barely a week after gunmen kidnapped him along with an aide. The discovery of Okechukwu Okoye's mutilated body over the weekend has sparked outrage. Anambra State Governor Charles Soludo described the killing as gruesome, barbaric and shocking. He announced a reward for information leading to the killer's capture. It is not clear who was behind the attack. Officials have blamed a banned separatist group for increasing violence in the region. The indigenous people of Biafra, which is campaigning for a breakaway state, has denied involvement in the recent attacks. Its leader, Nnamdi Kanu, is standing trial for terrorism and treason-related charges, which he has denied. And 5 soldiers and 30 terrorists were killed in fighting in northern Burkina Faso after the suspected jihadists attacked a military base in large numbers on Saturday, the army has reported. Troops in Buruzanga, a town in the northern region which has been bearing the brunt of the jihadist revolt, vigorously retaliated against an attack on its base on Saturday. The army said in a statement the attackers were terrorists who came in very large numbers and heavily armed. That is what the army said. 5 soldiers were killed in the fighting and 10 others injured. Some of the attackers merged with the civilian population to escape the military, leaving behind weapons, motorcycles and communication equipment. Burkina Faso troops also seized an armored vehicle and armed pickup trucks used by the attackers, according to the statement. Burkina Faso has been battered by jihadist raids since 2015, with movements linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State groups. More than 2,000 people have been killed and 1.8 million displaced. On Thursday, 11 soldiers were killed in a suspected jihadist attack in eastern Burkina Faso. And we head back to Uganda, where Uganda police have arrested political activist and former presidential contender Kizza Besigye as he attempted to leave his home in Kasangati, Wakiso district. He is currently detained in a police van which had been parked near his home state. The veteran politician was headed to Kasangati town to protest against the high commodity prices. The police did not give any reason for his arrest on Monday. Since early this month, Dr. Besigye renewed his criticism of President Yoweri Museveni's government for doing nothing to cushion vulnerable Ugandans against the skyrocketing prices of essential commodities. His arrest comes just hours after President Museveni delivered a televised national address in which he said the government will not intervene through subsidies and removing import taxes because doing so could collapse the economy. And then we go back to Zimbabwe. And Elmar Brok, the head of the EU electoral mission, told reporters on Friday that as Zimbabwe prepares for next year's election, it must amend its electoral laws so that all parties have a fair chance of winning. at the polls broke, and his team were assigned to Zimbabwe by Brussels to share their findings after their first visit to Zimbabwe during the July 2018 elections. In an interview with Voice of America, Brook, a German national, said the mission gave Zimbabwean officials 23 recommendations for genuine electoral reforms. Very well, and then we head over to South Sudan, and Unity State's Mayandit County Commissioner has said calm has returned in the area following an attempt to kill him on Sunday. Dr. Gatluak Nyang came under an attack at his residence in Mayandit town, he alleged, by youth from neighboring Lear County. The armed youth also attacked the market in the area before they were repelled by area forces. The attack left a 9-year-old child wounded with no death casualty reported. Nyang accuses the Lear County youth of targeting lives of people in Mayandit. On the latest development of an attack on Nyang's residence, Lear County Commissioner Stephen Taker denies any involvement of his youth in the attack. However, he says they are still investigating to establish if the attackers were from his county. And then we end with some news from the World Health Organization, where the organization now was due to hold an emergency meeting, is due to hold an emergency meeting to discuss recent outbreak of the monkeypox, a viral infection, and where more than 100 cases were confirmed or suspected in Europe, in what Germany described as the largest ever outbreak in Europe. Cases have now been confirmed in at least 5 counties: the United Kingdom, Spain, Portugal, Germany and Italy, as well as the United States, Canada and Australia. First identified in the monkeys, the disease typically spreads through close contact and has rarely spread outside Africa, so this series of cases has triggered concern. However, scientists do not expect the outbreak to evolve into a pandemic like the COVID-19, given the virus does not spread as easily as SARS-CoV-2. Monkeypox is usually mild viral illness characterized by symptoms of fever as well as distinctive bumpy rash. Okay, so that is the latest news from within and across Africa and outside. So hopefully this monkeypox does not become another crisis. Like we're just trying to get a break from COVID, and we're not even out of the woods yet. So an outbreak of another pandemic, I think that will not be very good for the rest of the world, because now, that will be too much, I think. So, and I will come to that in a minute. But first, let's look at some of these calls by the EU electoral mission in Zimbabwe, and saying that, even as Zimbabwe looks to go to its elections next year, there's some of the recommendations. The EU gave about 23 recommendations to the government of Zimbabwe, and they are asking the government of Zimbabwe to implement these recommendations before the polls in 2023. While a lot of the issues that they are mentioning here are legitimate, but also I think the manner in which maybe these, countries outside of Africa, how they feel they still have a say in how we do our things, or how they feel they have to perfect the manner in which Africa and the African states, make decisions. I think it is something that perhaps we need to draw the line. As much as we know Zimbabwe is in a financial crisis right now that President Mnangagwa inherited from the late President Robert Mugabe, and that came after years of sanction. When Mugabe started implementing the controversial land reforms in his country. And we can go back and look at the history and look at the agreement that Zimbabwe had with Britain and how the compensation was supposed to take place and all that. So we will not get into that. It's a lot behind that. But as much as there are some gaps as far as governance and human rights and democracy is concerned in Zimbabwe, but you just can't come and say, okay, as the EU, we have written 23 recommendations, and before you go to elections next year, please make sure that you implement this first. You could suggest, You could tell the government of Zimbabwe, you know what, we think it will be a good idea if, you could perhaps consider this, but not put it as if they have to, and if they don't, obviously there will be some ramification of that. Perhaps more sanctions will put into. I think this is not fair. You're dealing with independent African countries, and sometimes I agree. And I'm not holding a brief for any government. I know we lack as far as good governance is concerned in this continent. We have bad leaders who make poor choices that get to affect us. And a lot of times we vote in these terrible leaders, and a lot of times they rig themselves in. So we're in a constant crisis as far as governance and leadership is concerned in the continent. But be it as it may, we are still independent states. And I know independence is very relative when it comes to African countries, because we say we're independent, but yeah, we can't even afford to take care of our own elections. We still need the people from the EU and the rest of the world to come and fund even our electoral processes and other important aspects of our being as independent states. So independence is relative, but still we are independent. And I think even as we engage with the community of the international community of the world, there has to be some level of respect, mutual respect from state to state, from economic bloc like EU to African Union and things like that. I don't think African Union goes to EU and makes demands and have to say that this country must do this, otherwise we're going to have a problem. But anyway, so these are some of the recommendations that EU is saying Zimbabwe must put in place even as it prepares to go to its elections next year. And according to that statement by the EU, which was shared, of course, the EU, the representative of EU to Zimbabwe is a German national by the name Elmar Brok, and he said it has to do with even playing field. And I agree. Like I said, a lot of these issues they're raising, they're legitimate as far as perhaps some of the reforms that needs to be done are concerned. But it is the manner in which they communicate, the manner in which they feel they have a stake, the manner in which they feel like they have to patronize African states. I think that is where I do have a problem with, because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, however these countries are run, they are independent countries, and we should have some level of respect even as we engage. So some of the conditions, they're saying there should be an even playing field, and I agree with that. The impartiality of the state, of the media, because we've seen sometimes, even internet being messed up with during elections, like the last elections in Zimbabwe. So there should be some level of impartiality, and every person that is campaigning or that has offered themselves to run for these elective positions in Zimbabwe, they should be allowed to have the same space, the same airtime as far as media in Zimbabwe is concerned. And I totally agree with that, for the interest of fairness and equal treatment of parties, proper voters registration, and there is a multi-party liaison committee, and then there will be proper conducting of elections, the conduct on election day, the transparency and the counting, and the collection of the counting to the final results. If that is transparently clear, no loopholes, then it is the best way to have peace in the country, because nobody say there was something wrong with the elections to get the credibility of elections. So this is what this the head of electoral missions, EU electoral mission to Zimbabwe is saying. So they're saying these are just some of the things that Zimbabwe has to put in place as safeguards to ensure that they do have the tenets that guarantees free, fair and verifiable elections is concerned. And I agree a lot with a lot of the things that the head of this mission is saying. My problem is just how they feel like you must do it, and if you don't do it, and so we will force it down your throats, and okay. So hopefully, I don't know what Zimbabwe will do. And even speaking of about Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe has been trying, and I think I brought you this news last week as well. They've been trying to convince the EU and the other countries outside, to allow for them to sell their stockpile of ivory that is now worth about $600 million US. Of course, this ban on the trade of ivory was brought about in 1989 in the Convention on International Trade and Endangered Species. So Zimbabwe is asking for some of this ivory to be sold, the ones they have accumulated over the years. And Zimbabwe has about 85,000 jumbos, double the carrying capacity, and conflicts with farmers are rising. So they're saying they already have enough elephants as it is, more than what the country can hold. So I don't know if they're planning to get rid of some of that so that they're able to balance. I thought nature just balances itself out, or no, but there has been an increase of conflict between these jumbos and the farmers, which has been on the rise, to people who stay, near parks, and when some of these elephants stray and have caused a lot of havoc. I don't know. So what is conflicting for me is they want to sell this ivory so that they get money to put back into conservation and protect these elephants. So are we going to find the stockpile of the ivory, which means a good number of elephants died? So are we going to sell this, or we shall be killing more so that we come to protect the others which are still alive? I don't understand. This trade was stopped, and by good reasons. We know that one of the key beneficiaries, was China. I think it was the biggest market for ivory. So this ban was put there to ensure that the endangered species gets protected, and the jumbo is just one of them. The elephants is just one of these species, and Africa has the largest population of elephants, with about 415,000 elephants. So we're going to sell the ivory and then get the money, put it back into conservation and protect these other elephants. Will that not encourage, the hunting of more, the killing of more? Because I don't think it will stop. If we open up that market again and lift this ban, that will mean that you don't know, that might continue, and that might affect even their live elephants. So I'm a bit conflicted, but I do understand, Zimbabwe's position. It does need the money. I don't know if the elephants need the money more for conservation, or the people need the money more so that, because things are not going okay in Zimbabwe as far as its economic status is concerned. I know the world is struggling, and we'll get to one other country that is struggling right now, Uganda, but still, I don't know if Zimbabwe be allowed to sell this stockpile of ivory that it already has, or will that encourage poaching, illegal poaching of more jumbos is concerned, as far as that trade is concerned? Let me know if that will be a good idea. Okay, so let's, the long-suffering opposition leader in Uganda, I call him long-suffering because that guy has suffered, Kizza Besigye. So yesterday, President Museveni gave a speech, and I disagree a lot of times with a lot of things President Museveni says and does. But he can be real. He can be too real for his own good as the head of state. Sometimes you have to be real, but also you have to be sensitive and alive to what is happening or to the current situation in your country. So President Museveni was speaking to the country over the rising cost, okay? The cost of living is up all over the world. I don't know which country is not feeling the pangs of whatever else is happening across the world that has caused this ripple effect. Now we have to all feel the heat. But prices of petroleum products, imported raw materials and food have been rising in the recent months. And that is the story all over the world. So in a televised national address yesterday night, Mr. Museveni said the government subsidies or removal of import taxes would collapse the economy, saying, no, we're not removing that. We shall continue taxing these things because the government does not own any shop. That's where the government makes its money. So if we remove the subsidies, if we put subsidies in place and remove the import tax, where do you think we're going to get our money? Our economy will collapse, okay? So that will not happen. And also, he also said that, Ugandans needs to start being frugal and use the imported items it can afford and to use it in a frugal manner, so not to be very generous. So it's how he looks at things and how the interventions sometimes he expresses and how he looks at situations. Sometimes you just wonder, this is an old man who perhaps should not be talking Sunday night and giving a national address, should be having his nap. Because he gives very, I know very real advice sometimes, but at the end of the day, you are the head of state, President Museveni. So as much as things are bad, you should still be able to, to offer some level of sympathy and just let Ugandans know that, you know what, I hear you and I understand. Things are hard. But as a government, we are doing all we can, to make sure that the situation changes. Not Museveni. Museveni is as real as it gets. He says, no, the taxes will stay. The import taxes will stay because that will affect the economy. And he also advised Ugandans to stop relying so much on wheat and start eating millet, maize, green bananas, and cassava. Like, you really don't have to take your chapatis or eat your cake. I don't know if there's any other way you can bake your cake without the wheat. But he's saying, could you stop all that? Like, there are other foods that you could eat that could also, just, fill up that gap as it is. So yesterday while he was talking, after Besigye, the long-suffering opposition leader, attempted to leave his home in Kasangati, Wakiso district. He wanted to go and protest over the high commodity prices. I sympathize with Besigye, but high commodity prices, it is not something that is uniquely a Ugandan problem. We saw President Samia Suluhu about 2 weeks ago, also on a Sunday evening, had an emergency meeting with her cabinet over the same issues. In Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta and his government, they have been grappling with the same problem. So for Kizza Besigye to take this opportunity now to go out and protest, and protesting is a good thing, a demonstration is a good thing, but you already know that in Uganda, that is already just a bad idea. In Kenya, we could do it because we do have that democratic space that allows us to express ourselves to a certain degree, but in Uganda, that's just a suicide mission. So anyway, there are police. It's like police have set a permanent residence in his home, him and Bobby Wine. I think they've probably built like a police post just next to their home so that anytime they feel the excitement of wanting to leave their homes to go lead a protest or anything that the government is not accepting of, and then the police will be there. Is there, all right? So they enjoy unmatched, government security, which they don't even need, but it's there, whether they like it or not. So Kizza Besigye wanted to go and protest over this, the high commodity prices. Kizza Besigye, and a lot of times you protest over things that I sometimes, a lot of Ugandans feel the same way. But on this one, I don't think, and I think Museveni said a lot of these things, he can't help it. I think, where was I reading? He said, the situation, yes, this is what Museveni said. His government will not intervene in the current economic situation. Yes, Museveni is as real as that. He said, there's nothing my government can do. I don't know how reassuring that is from a head of state, but he said, we can't do anything because that is the situation and there's nothing as the government we can do. And so there's nothing much a lot of governments can do, not just in Uganda, but also in Kenya. We see, every kind of solution that President Uhuru Kenyatta and his government try to come with. But it still is not enough to address the issues that have been brought about by some of these global factors. And President Museveni said that my government cannot intervene because we don't have solutions for your problems right now. So for Kizza Besigye to want to protest at this point, well, the issue of high cost of living is not just a Uganda thing. It is something that is affecting all of us across the world. I think this perhaps was not the right time, and he wanted to protest just after President Museveni made that speech yesterday. So I don't think it was the right move for him, and I usually support a lot of some of these issues that, you know, his rights to protest and his rights to speak his mind, which has forever been forbidden in Uganda. But I think on this one, it was not necessary for Besigye to want to protest, because if it's protesting, a lot of us Kenyans even tried the hashtag lower food prices. That was months ago. So as we've been feeling the heat, you know, since COVID and just prior that, and so it has been a roller coaster. Things are hard in Kenya, things are hard in Tanzania, things are hard in Rwanda, things are hard across the world, even in Britain, in you know, in those countries which we thought are well cushioned, but things are hard all over the place. So I think on this one, Besigye perhaps might have been trying to do just a little bit too much over there. And of course, the current chair of the African Union, Senegalese President Macky Sall, met with the German Chancellor yesterday, and I think Germany and Europe are looking for new markets where they can be getting the supplies of gas and oil. And of course, Macky Sall, as the African Union chair, he has been given the mandate by the heads of state to try and mediate, to go and talk to Putin in Russia, and also go talk to Ukrainian president and see if at all adding our voice there as the continent and trying to mediate, you know, this unnecessary, senseless war that should already have come to an end already, that is affecting all of us, you know, should have come to an end already. So, you know, Macky Sall is going there in his capacity as the African Union chair, and I'd like to hear what, you know, the result of that meeting. So, of course, the Russian-Ukraine crisis has cut off supplies of grain and cooking oil, and we've seen that, and a worsening food insecurity, particularly in poorer African countries. Have you heard, Besigye? That is one key reason. And of course, global fuel prices have also risen as a result, adding the cost burden to many countries, because, you know, one key factor of manufacturing is fuel. So if the fuel prices are up, so ordinarily, I mean, it's natural that the prices of the commodities, the end product, will go high, and that means that the consumers get to foot that bill. So that's why you've seen the prices of things have gone up. You know, just the basics of economy and as manufacturing and commodity is concerned, okay? And I'm sure Besigye would understand that. But anyway, I'm looking forward to hear what Macky Sall will come out of after he's gone to Ukraine and Russia, and we hear what those two sides have to say. But that is that. As I said there earlier, you know, the monkeypox is out here, and as you speak, EU health chiefs tell nations to prepare vaccination strategies amid scramble to contain tropical virus as Denmark becomes the 16th country to be struck down. And the EU health authorities are telling their member states to prepare a monkeypox vaccine plan. It was claimed today no monkeypox specific vaccine exists at the present, but smallpox jab is 85% effective at stopping the infection of the monkeypox. And the UK health chiefs have already immunized close contacts of 20 cases in Britain, including NHS workers. So European countries will start vaccinating anybody suspected to have that, and also to have been in contact. Oh goodness, I just pray this does not become another coronavirus. Like, we've had enough. Goodness gracious, we've had enough of that. And now this. And monkeypox is usually only spotted within Africa. Yeah. But 16 countries, including the US, France, and Spain, have all now detected the virus this month. Denmark is latest to confirm an infection in a man who recently returned from Spain. Thank God they're not returning from Africa, because at this point, if they'd even spotted a case that for anybody who had come from Africa, they would have put a ban immediately, you know, travel restrictions and whatnot. You know how they overreact. Anything that is perceived not nice from Africa, they overreact. So thank goodness It's still bad that this is happening, but thank goodness, as much as this monkeypox is usually spotted in the continent, but this time round, we don't even have recorded cases from the continent. So, and health chiefs are alarmed by the unprecedented cluster of cases, which has disproportionately struck gay and bisexual men. Okay, now that's interesting. I'm reading from the Daily Mail from the UK. All right. However, leading experts are adamant monkeypox won't spiral out of control like COVID, which forced nations into economically crippling restrictions. We hope not. Okay, so just some of the warning signs include fever, headache, muscle and backache, swollen lymph nodes, I think here, chills and exhaustion, and then, yeah. All right, so just take care. In case you see any of those symptoms, please be sure to visit your nearest health center. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Miriam Ogutu. I'll see you here again tomorrow, God willing. Bye-bye for now.